The General Hospital spoilers for Monday, August 25th, suggest that Drew Kane will make an annoying move, while Rick Lansing threatens prison. Cody Bell will also rat out Kristina Davis. So let's talk about all the GH drama. At the Quartermain stables, Cody will want to meet with Molly Lansing Davis privately. Molly just found Cody with his lips all over Ava Jerome, so she'll assume she knows who he's thinking about. However, Cody admits that he is merely chasing Ava to disrupt her relationship with Rick. After Cody blames Kristina for hiring him, Molly decides she wants to approach her sister and get some honest answers. Meanwhile, Rick's chat with Kristina will take an unexpected turn. Kristina appears to be about to strike out at Rick over the blackmail plot, which will make him furious. Prison should be your next destination, Rick shouts in Monday's preview video. Lulu Spencer and Brooklyn Quartermain will have another incentive to band together in favor of Maxie Jones. Sadly, Lucas Jones will deliver some dreadful news about Maxie's condition. Liesl Albrecht's biggest fear appears to have come true, so Lucas may inform Maxie's loved ones that she is in coma. Drew will summon Alexis Davis for a meeting, and use it as an opportunity to surprise her with a restraining order. Alexis will be outraged that Drew is taking yet another step to keep her away from Scout Quartermain. Drew will also become a topic of conversation for Martin Gray and Laura Collins, who will learn of the Stella Henry probe and Martin's response. Martin will be concerned about what can happen next now that he has entered enemy territory with Drew. Britt Westbourne will then question Jason Morgan why he is still at the Five Poppies Resort, to which he would respond that he did not receive what he came for. As Britt enters Jason's suite, she will once again encourage him to leave. Jason will press Britt to tell him what she is doing there instead, since he is still perplexed by the whole operation. Britt may be unable to provide any information, and Jason's attempt to assist her in fleeing the premises will be unsuccessful. Britt can't just run away and avoid the lab work she's supposed to undertake, because she still needs her medication injections. Pascal will take Jocelyn Jack somewhere at gunpoint, so she should join Vaughn in prison soon. According to General Hospital teasers, Pascal will have more fires to put out, so stay tuned for updates on the turmoil. According to General Hospital spoilers, Kristina Davis' startling attempt to murder Ava Jerome could spark a feud between her and sister Molly Lansing Davis. Kristina botched her revenge attempt and nearly killed Molly's father, Rick Lansing. Molly will not take well to that, especially given Kristina's history of wrecking Molly's life. Will Kristina finally pay for her crime? Kristina recruited Cody Bell for her revenge scheme and hired him to seduce Ava Jerome. The only problem is that Molly and Cody are developing affections for each other. How will Molly respond if the extent of Kristina's treachery is revealed? On a thrilling Friday cliffhanger, Molly found Cody and Ava in a half-naked clinch in the stables. Cody might try to explain by saying Kristina wanted to get Molly's father away from Ava. But Molly would wonder why Kristina would go so far without understanding the backstory. Will Cody spill the beans to Molly? Molly is a sharp cookie, and her analytical mind will detect that there is more going on than she is being told. Molly confronts Kristina in the aftermath of her incident with Rick. During their confrontation, Kristina and Rick quarrel over him and Ava blackmailing Kristina's mother, Alexis Davis, for her conduct. Kristina is a Russian roulette revolver ready to fire on her best day. Will today be the day she cracks like a ripe watermelon and confesses everything? If she does, Kristina may justify her actions as an attempt to bring down Rick and Ava since they are blackmailing Alexis. Kristina's messy way of thinking, however, if Kristina confesses, she must explain why Rick and Ava may blackmail her. With her legal savvy, we doubt Molly will simply tolerate her sister nearly killing Rick and Elizabeth Baldwin. Kristina consoled Molly after Rick's accident, exposing her as a hypocrite, but she also turned Cody against her. General Hospital spoilers suggest that Molly and Kristina will have a heated argument. Do you think this hectic circumstance has harmed her ties with Rick and Alexis? The air in the small, poorly lighted living room was thick with tension, the kind that clings to the walls and makes every utterance feel as if it were teetering on the brink of disaster. Drew stood by the window, his figure stark against the fading dusk light, his hands buried deep in the pockets of his worn-out pants. His jaw was set, his eyes squinted, and he stared out at the peaceful street, as if it contained the answers to the catastrophe he had just created. Rick walked around the room like a caged animal, his shine shoes clicking on the wooden floor, each stride a reminder of his barely controlled wrath. And then there was Cody, slouching on the sagging couch, his fingers nervously tapping against the armrest, his gaze flickering between the two men like a child caught in the middle of a parental fight. Kristina, the unspoken core of the storm, was not present, but her presence hovered over them like a ghost, her name a spark poised to ignite the entire room. It had begun innocently enough, or as innocent as it could be amid their twisted web of loyalties and betrayals. Drew had always been the impulsive type, acting first and thinking later if at all. He'd made a move. No one knew what it was yet, but it was large enough to cause waves in their tightly knit circle. Whispers had been circulating for days, half-truths and rumors that became clearer with each repetition. Some claimed he had crossed a boundary with Kristina, something personal that went deeper than their typical machinations. Others claimed it was all about money, a failed deal, or a betrayal that left someone out in the cold. Whatever it was, it made Rick's blood boil, which was never a good sign. Rick paused his pacing long enough to point a finger at Drew, his voice low and threatening, like a dog growling before biting. Do you think you can do whatever you want? There are no consequences, no fallout. Just Drew, the golden boy, skating by while the rest of us clean up your mess. His remarks were sharp and crisp, landing like jabs. Drew did not look away from the window, nor did he flinch, but the strain in his shoulders indicated that he had heard every word. You don't know what you're talking about, Rick, he finally remarked, his voice calm but chilly, as if he was attempting to persuade himself as much as everyone else. This is not about you. It's larger than that. Bigger. Rick laughed loudly and bitterly, filling the room. Drew, you don't get to decide what is huge. Not when you're playing with fire and expecting us to put it out. He took a step closer, his fitted suit standing out against the turmoil. Rick was the glue that held everything together, the planner, strategist, and the person who always had an angle. But suddenly his grip was failing, and it was evident he wasn't just angry. He was terrified. They were afraid of what Drew's decision would cost them, and what it would mean for the delicate balance they'd been maintaining for years. Cody shuffled uneasily on the couch, his sneakers rubbing against the floor. He was unlike the other two. He lacked Drew's charm and Rick's ruthlessness. He was just Cody, the man who always seemed to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, with too much knowledge but never enough to keep him out of trouble. Maybe we should just talk to Kristina, he said, his voice just above a whisper, as if he were testing the waters. The room became still. Drew's head shot toward him, his eyes narrowed, and Rick's stare fixed on Cody like a cat on prey. What do you know about Kristina? Rick inquired, his voice dangerously quiet, the kind that made your skin crawl. Cody swallowed hard, his fingers remaining on the armrest. He hadn't meant to utter her name like that, but it was out now and there was no going back. I heard some things, he mumbled, his gaze shifting to Drew and then back to Rick. She has been talking, you know? About what occurred. About Drew. The words hung in the air, heavy and condemning, and for a time nothing moved. Drew's face was unreadable, but his hands came out of his pockets and formed fists at his sides. Rick's gaze never left Cody, but there was a change in his demeanor, a calculating glimmer that suggested he was already 3 steps ahead. Talking, Rick said, the word dripping with venom. And you didn't think of mentioning this sooner? Cody opened his lips to answer, but Rick interrupted him, his voice rough and piercing. You sat there knowing she was out there spewing secrets and didn't say anything? Do you know what's at stake here? Cody shrank back, hunching his shoulders as if he could shrink and become invisible. I didn't think it was a big deal, he whispered, but the words were weak even for him. He'd always been more devoted to Kristina than to the others, but loyalty in their world was a slippery thing, and he'd just gotten himself into severe trouble. Drew eventually turned from the glass, his gaze fixed on Cody with such intensity that the younger guy flinched. What did she say? He asked, his voice low, almost growling. There was something raw about it, something that hinted at the gravity of what he'd done. Cody hesitated, his lips dry and his mind racing for an escape. But there was no way out, not with Rick glaring him down and Drew looking like he would explode at any time. Cody added, she said you sold her out, in a haste. Said you negotiated a deal behind her back that might get her in trouble. Big trouble. The room appeared to compress, the air becoming heavier and the quiet deafening. Drew's expression did not change, But there was a flicker in his eyes, a flash of something, guilt perhaps or regret, before it vanished, replaced by that same steely resolve. "She's wrong," he stated calmly, with no conviction or fire. Rick snorted, crossed his arms, and his posture screamed skepticism. "Wrong," he stated. "Is that your defense? Is she wrong? Do you think that will enough when this comes back to haunt us?" He took another step toward Drew, narrowing the gap between them, his voice lowering to a menacing whisper. "Drew, you're on thin ice. If you make another mistake, I'll make sure you pay the price. Do you believe prison is a joke? Keep pushing and you'll find out." The threat was raw and real, and Drew appeared terrified for the first time. Prison was more than just a word to them. It was a shadow that hung over every trade, risk, and step they took in their world of half-truths and double-crosses. Rick had the connections, the pull, to follow through on his threat, and everyone in the room knew it. Cody's eyes widened, and his breath caught as he realized how serious this was getting. He'd always known Rick was merciless, but seeing it laid naked like that, and seeing Drew's confidence waver, it struck him hard. It wasn't just about Kristina anymore. This was about survival. Drew took a stride toward Rick, his fists still clenched, his voice low and steady, as if he was attempting to regain some control. "You can't threaten me, Rick. Not after all I've done for you. For all of us." His gaze shifted to Cody, then back to Rick, a challenge in his expression. "Do you want to talk about prison? Fine. But you better be prepared to look in the mirror, because none of us are clean." Calling Rick out like that was a risky move, and for a brief period it appeared to succeed. Rick's look faltered briefly, but it was enough to indicate that Drew's remarks had struck a chord. Cody, however, could not be silent. The weight of everything, Drew's betrayal, Rick's threat, and Kristina's name being dragged through the mud, was overwhelming. "She didn't deserve this," he exclaimed, his voice shaking. "Kristina trusted you, Drew. She trusted all of us. And now she's out there alone because you couldn't keep your word." The charge fell like a bomb and Drew's face contorted, a mix of rage and something else which appeared to be shame. Rick's eyes narrowed as his focus returned to Cody, and for a little time, it felt as if the entire room was holding its breath, waiting for the next explosion. "Do you think you're the hero here, Cody?" Rick replied, his voice full of scorn. "Do you think talking about Kristina makes you loyal? You are just as involved in this as the rest of us. You were aware of what was going on and chose not to intervene. Don't pretend like your hands are clean." Cody's cheeks reddened, his lips opening and closing as he searched for an answer, but there was none. Rick was correct in a way. Cody had sensed something was wrong, heard the murmurs and seen Kristina's smile diminish during the last few weeks. But he'd remained silent, expecting that everything would blow over, and that he wouldn't have to choose sides. Drew took a step back, his gaze flickering between Rick and Cody, as if he were calculating his next move. "This isn't about sides," he finally added, his voice becoming softer, almost imploring. "I did what I needed to do. For each of us. You'll see it eventually." But the words sounded hollow, and Drew appeared to understand. Rick shook his head, a bitter smirk forming on his lips. "You keep telling yourself that," he replied. "But when this all comes crashing down, don't expect me to save you." The room grew silent again, the weight of their words settling over them like dust. Outside, the lamps flickered on, creating long shadows across the glass, and the world appeared to carry on, oblivious to the storm developing inside. Cody's fingers began tapping again, an anxious cadence that mirrored the pounding in his heart. He wanted to speak more, defend Kristina, and make sense of the turmoil, but he wasn't sure where to begin. Drew's move, whatever it was, had shattered something fundamental, something that had kept them together despite all the falsehoods and risks. And Rick's threat was more than just that. It was a promise, a line in the sand. Kristina's absence was the loudest sound in the room. She was out there someplace, possibly terrified, angry, or scheming her own revenge. Cody could still picture her face, how her eyes would light up when she laughed, and how she was always the one to pull them back from the brink. But now, owing to Drew, she was on the outside, and Cody couldn't shake the sensation that he had let her down. He'd ratted her out not because he wanted to, but because he was afraid, and the pressure of Rick's look and Drew's silence had been too much. And now he was trapped, between two men who were ready to tear one another apart, and a lady who might never forgive him. The night went on, the tension never breaking, only increasing with each passing minute. Drew remained by the window, his back to the room, his silence louder than any words. Rick resumed his pace, his mind plainly racing, thinking and planning, always 3 steps ahead. And Cody, poor Cody, just sat there, his heart hammering, his mind a jumble of remorse, fear, and loyalty that he couldn't disentangle. The universe they had created, the frail web of trust and secrets, was disintegrating, and no one knew how to stop it. All they could do was wait, for Kristina, the truth, and the fallout from Drew's furious move. Molly could feel the strain rising like a tempest inside her chest. The weight of every secret she had been forced to keep suddenly smashing down on her. She had always taken pride in being the calm, reasonable Davis sister, the one who kept her cool when everyone else did not. But today was different. Today, she was neither the mediator nor the quiet one who let things slip. Today, Molly Lansing Davis had reached her breaking point. It began with Kristina, as it frequently does. Kristina had made yet another rash decision that had somehow led to pandemonium. But this time the stakes were higher than ever. Molly couldn't understand how everyone around her seemed ready to protect Kristina at any cost, regardless of the consequences. It was not just about her sister. It was also about Rick, Cody, and Alexis. Every one of them had been involved in hiding a hazardous secret, and Molly had been the last to learn. That betrayal burned hotter than anything she had ever experienced before. When she came inside Alexis's house and saw her mother's and Rick's regretful expressions, she realized something had gone wrong. Her stomach fell immediately. They weren't just concealing something, they were covering it up. And the more Molly pried, the more it became evident that everyone she cared about had chosen to keep her out of the picture. It was not only offensive but also hazardous. Kristina had gotten herself entangled in something she shouldn't have touched. Cody was also involved, though their link was hazy at best. Molly had repeatedly warned her sister against trusting people too quickly and jumping headfirst into situations without considering the consequences. But Kristina, as usual, waved her off, stating she had everything under control. And now they were. Alexis scrambling, Rick lying through his teeth, and Cody looking as if he'd rather disappear into thin air than explain himself. Molly's voice cracked as she sought answers, but no one was willing to talk. That silence only fueled her rage. She was no longer a child, and she deserved to know what was going on. But Alexis just continued giving her the same gentle, dismissive responses. "It's complicated, Molly. We're handling it. This wasn't good enough. It never was." Finally, Rick intervened, placing a hand on Molly's shoulder as if he thought it would calm her down, and she fully lost it. All of her bottled-up fury throughout the years finally burst out. Rick had a lengthy history of deception, treachery, and manipulation, and now he was at the center of yet another scandal. Molly couldn't believe she had once defended him in front of others when she knew deep down what he was capable of. This wasn't a man who merited her trust, and he proved it yet again. "Do you think I can't see what's going on here?" she cried, her voice wavering but forceful. "You are all protecting Kristina, but for what? So she can get herself in deeper problems while the rest of us clean up her mess? You're choosing her irresponsibility over the truth, and I'm done pretending it's acceptable." Kristina, of course, did not take the outburst well. She fired back, saying Molly was condemning her, acting holier than thou like she always did, as if Molly had never made her own mistakes. But Molly refused to back down this time. This was not about being flawless. It was about being honest and keeping the family from imploding totally. Cody attempted to interfere, but the moment he opened his mouth, Molly turned on him too. She wanted to know what role he had in all of this. Why was he suddenly so concerned about protecting Kristina? Why did Alexis appear to trust him more than her own daughter? There was no logical answer, unless Cody was involved in something deeper than anyone wanted to admit. What made matters worse was Molly could see Alexis struggling, torn between her daughters, desperate to keep the family together but unwilling to confront Kristina's misdeeds. Alexis had always had a blind spot for her children, but this was different. She wasn't just ignoring the problem. She was actively helping to hide it. Molly found that unforgivable. Her rage was not solely about being left out. It was about betrayal. about realizing that her mother and Rick were willing to bend the facts and manipulate the situation in order to keep Kristina safe, no matter the cost to the rest of them. Molly had spent her entire life doing everything right, working hard, following the rules and being the responsible one. But it never seemed to matter as much as Kristina's turmoil. That long-buried resentment erupted, and there was no stopping it. The argument quickly escalated. Kristina accused Molly of not understanding her, and of continuously assuming she was superior to everyone else. Molly accused Kristina of being selfish, reckless, and entirely unaware of how her decisions affected the family. Alexis attempted to mediate, but each word she spoke just exacerbated the situation. Rick stood there, watching the chaos unfold as if he had seen the movie before and knew the ending. Molly stormed away, her hands trembling and her chest tight from pushing back tears she didn't want anyone to see. She had no idea where she was heading, but she knew she couldn't stay there any longer. Everything she knew about her family seemed to be turned on its head. The individuals she trusted the most had lied to her, and she wasn't sure how to forgive them. Not now. Later that night, alone in her apartment, she replayed the entire confrontation over. The voices, the shouting, the looks exchanged between Rick and Alexis. It all played out in her thoughts like a scene she couldn't get away from. And the more she thought about it, the deeper she realized this was. This was not a little error or misunderstanding. They had a significant secret regarding Kristina, Cody, and Rick. Dangerous indeed. Molly wasn't about to let it go. She could not. If no one else was willing to tell her the truth, she would discover it herself. She opened her laptop and searched through public records for information on Cody, Kristina's recent activities, and Rick's past deals. Every click, every search result made her stomach twist tighter, because the more she discovered, the more sure she grew that this wasn't just a family issue. It was something that might devastate Port Charles if revealed. For the first time in her life, Molly felt entirely disconnected from her family. She loved them, but love was insufficient when trust was lost. She couldn't deny what she knew, and she wasn't going to let them keep her in the dark any longer. She had no idea where this route would go, but one thing was certain: Molly Lansing Davis would not back down this time. Not from Kristina, Rick, or Alexis. If people wanted to keep secrets, that was fine, but she was tired of being excluded from them. And if it meant blowing out the entire Davis family to find out the truth, so be it. Because the falsehoods had gone on long enough, Molly was ready to burn everything down before anyone could harm her family from within.